Hello, everyone, and welcome back to an episode of Microsoft Excel. In this segment, I'd like to talk about a function called VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP is a popular function in Excel. It allows you to look up a certain data value. So for example, it would allow us to enter a part number and then find the price for that part number. Okay. So as you can see, we have a pretty simple data range right here, and with just 3 columns. We have a product ID, a product name, and a product price. Okay, so let's say I want to set up a VLOOKUP table that will allow me to put in a product ID and then find the price for that ID. Okay, now before I set up that function, I'm just going to put in a few row labels here just to help keep myself organized. So I'm going to click on cell E1 right here. And right here, I'm going to put in just what we see over there in cell A1. I'm going to put in product ID. And then I'm going to click down here in E2, and this is going to be product price. And then I'm going to click outside that cell real quick up here on F1. And then I'm going to find my two-way arrow between E and F, double click, and just open up that column. Okay, now I can just keep myself organized. So I know that I'm going to enter a product ID here, and then it's going to show me the product price right here. So just as always, when we're setting up our formula, we're going to put it in the cell where we want the answer to go. So the answer is going to be where the product price is. So I'm going to click here in cell F2. Now that I've done that, I can go up and click on my Formulas tab, and I see in the function library a number of categories for those formulas. And I see one here right here. It's called Lookup and Reference. So I'm going to click on that category, and if I look down this list, all the way at the bottom, we see VLOOKUP. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and we get this dialog box. Now, if you watched the previous video on concatenate, this might look a little familiar. Again, sometimes when we do these more complicated formulas with Excel, Excel kind of guides us through the process of building that formula. Okay, so that's what it's doing here. And it's just kind of giving us instructions. So VLOOKUP is a little more complicated, so I will try to explain the best I can here. So first of all, the first thing we need to enter here is the lookup value. So what that means is the value that we're going to, it's referring to the cell where we're going to put the value that we need to look up. In other words, it's referring to the cell where we're going to enter the cell reference for the product ID. Okay, the cell where we're going to be putting in this information to find the price. So in this case, the cell we're going to be putting that information into is cell F1 right here, because we're going to be putting in the data into this cell for the product ID that matches this column here, which will then give us the price. Okay, so again, the lookup value refers to the cell where you'll be entering the cell reference of the value you need to look up. So I'm going to just type in F1. Okay, next we see table array. I'm going to click in that box. Now, table array refers to basically the data range you're going to be using to look up all your information. So the easiest way to do that, you can type it out, but I'm just going to kind of click and drag. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on this little button here. It's going to allow me to come over here and then select the data range I will use to look up my data. Now, make sure you don't select the column label. So I'm going to start with A2 here, click and drag down. So A2 through C13 are selected. Now I can come back over here, click on that button again, and open this back up. You'll see that it filled that information in for you here. Next, I'm going to move down to the index number here. Okay, now what this is referring to, column index number, it's actually, you need to count the number of columns over from your lookup column to where the answer is going to be. So in other words, and the lookup column is going to be considered column 1. So in other words, I need to look over here and say, okay, I'm going to be entering the product ID, and I want to find out the product price. So if product ID is column number 1, column product price is going to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, product price is going to be column number 3. So the answer I need will be coming from column 3. So that is going to go right here. Last but not least is range lookup. And this just refers to a couple of logical functions. For our purposes, we're going to be using false. Okay, true, you could also use true. Basically, the difference is that false is going to return an exact match. You have to type in it exactly, and it will return the value depending on an exact match. True has some flexibility, but it doesn't always work. It all depends on how you build your data. It can be a little tricky, so we're just going to use false for this exercise. So just type in the word false just as you see it there. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to just go ahead and click OK here. Okay, now right now it's going to show this because there's nothing in cell F1. So I'm going to click it in F1. Now let's say I want to look up the price for product ID right here in cell A6. So I'm going to type in exactly as it shows, GAR 7883. I'll press enter, and there we go. It shows me the price for the garlic press right here, $3.99. Okay, I'll do it one more time. I'll delete this. Let's try another one. I'll come down here to the very last one, RAM 7890, press enter. And there it is, returning the price for the ramekin here. Okay, so the tricky part is just kind of remembering how to fill in each of those fields. Okay, now one thing to note here is the lookup column we used must be the leftmost column of the data range we select. Okay, so let's see what that means. Let's say I want to look up the product price by the product name, not the product ID. All right, so let's get that set up very quickly. First of all, I'm going to, right here in cell F2 where that formula is, I'm just going to press delete and just delete that whole formula. I'm going to go up to F1, click on it, also hit delete and get rid of that. Next, I'm going to come over here to E1. I'm going to double click in that cell and change ID to name since now we're looking it up by product name. And let me just double click here between E and F to get to open up that column a little bit. There we go. All right, so again, I want to look up the product price by the product name this time. So I'm going to click in cell F2 because that's where the answer is going to go. Again, I'm going to come up here to the Formulas tab, click on Lookup and Reference, and come down here and click on VLOOKUP. Now, here we are again. So again, my lookup value refers to the cell in which I'm going to put in the cell reference of the specific value I'm looking up. So that's going to be cell F1. Now I'm going to click in table array, and this is where I have to be careful. So again, I want to look it up by product name, not product ID. But the lookup value must come from the leftmost column I select. So what does that mean? Well, let's click on this button here so we can go and select our data. Now I'm going to come over here. Now I'm not going to start with A2 because that is not going to work. It needs to start with B2 because I'm looking it up by product name and it needs to come from the leftmost column. So I'm going to select a B2 through C13. Now I'm going to come over here, click on the button again to go back to that builder. And here we are. Now I'm going to click on column index number. Now this time, I need to count the number of columns away from the lookup column. So I'm going to come over here. My lookup column is column B, product name, and the answer is going to come from column C for product price. So this is column 1, column C is column 2. So this is going to be 2. Last but not least is our range lookup, which is again going to be false. Let me click OK. Okay, now I'm going to click in cell F1 and let's put in, remember, must match. I'm going to put in ladle, press enter, and there we go. It gave me the correct price for ladle right here. So remember, it does matter what data you select when you do that table array because the lookup value must come from the leftmost column. Okay. Now you can also, and this is true for many functions, but you can set up a VLOOK table in a complete other worksheet if you want to. So you'll see down here, I'm going to click on this little tab where it says price lookup at the bottom here. And what I've done is I've set up a different worksheet, a separate worksheet where I can look up things from a different worksheet. Okay, so it's kind of, if in case I want to just kind of compartmentalize that way, I can do that as well. And the steps are very much the same, except for just a couple little differences. So again, in this case, I'm looking it up by product ID, and it's going to give me my product price. So again, I want my answer to go, in this case, the answer is going to go in cell D3 right here. So that's where I'm going to input my formula. So I've clicked on cell D3. I'm going to come up here, click on look to the formulas tab, click on lookup and reference, and then click on VLOOKUP. So this time, my lookup value is, again, it's the cell where I'm going to be typing in the data for which I want to find the price for. So that's going to be cell B3 right here. So I'm going to type in B3. Now I'm going to click in table right now. This time, the table's on a different worksheet, but the steps are very much the same. I'm going to click on this little button here to collapse this, get my select cursor. I'm just going to come down here, click on products, the products worksheet, and then I'm just going to, remember, I'm going to start with the leftmost column, so I'm going to select A2 through C13, and then I'm just going to come back over here, click on this button to get my dialog box back, and there we go. Now I'm going to click in column index number, okay, and it will revert back to your other worksheet. That's okay. And also notice in table array, it's actually giving me the name of the worksheet here, products with an exclamation point. That's the name of the worksheet that it's coming from. Now in column index number here, I'm going to put in 3 because remember it was the third column away from column A. Now I'm going to come down here in range lookup, I'm going to put in false, and then I'm going to click OK. Now if I come over here with a product ID, let's just look, I'm going to find one over here real quick. Let's just copy and paste here. And there we go. So it's giving me the price $89.79, and it is in fact matching up for the 12-inch copper skillet. Okay, so and those steps are very much the same. Anytime you incorporate data from a different worksheet, it's usually typically how we do it. We just have to come down here, click on the individual worksheet, select our data range from that worksheet, and then it will just plug it right in to our current worksheet. Okay, it's very simple. All right, so that was just a few quick exercises to get you acquainted with VLOOKUP, which is a very popular function with Excel. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and take care.